On this week's NESN Patriots Podcast, we will recap the first week of training camp and react to the addition of wide receiver Eric Decker. Hello and welcome to the NESN Patriots Podcast. I am Doug Kyed, joined as always by Zack.
Hello.
Zack, how are you doing?
I am doing well. I'm a little sweaty right now. I know that might be a little awkward for the podcast listeners to hear, but it has been hot down here this week. It has been about 90 plus every single day, and we're not even wearing pads.
Yeah, it's we watch practice from this little tent that's set up by the practice field, and sometimes I think that being in the tent is actually worse than being outside because there is no breeze whatsoever.
It's a little of a sauna effect in there, yeah.
Yeah, and it's kind of amazing how hot it gets so early down here. I brought my 11-month-old daughter to practice today. It was like, oh, it'll be like 9 o'clock. It'll be fine. And as soon as I walked in the tent, I was just like sweating buckets. I was thinking, this might not be the best thing for a baby, but I don't know. I mean, you were there with her. She seemed happy, right?
She was very smiling.
Yeah. Maybe it was like all the, I don't know, maybe she didn't have oxygen in her brain or something. But no, she was happy. I only
She's just
kept her
happy
there for
it's
a few
football
minutes.
season. Olivia loves football already.
She does, apparently. Yeah, and that gets us into camp. We're a week in. Patriots have already been making some moves. Today, Thursday, they reportedly signed Eric Decker. That will stop being reportedly and start becoming official soon, but for now we will use reportedly. I think it's a notable signing. I'm not sure if I would say that he's a lock to make the roster because we just saw what happened to Jordan Matthews. The Patriots either released or placed Matthews on IR, depending on what you believe or who you're listening to.
Bit of conflicting reports on that. Conflicting reports from the Patriots about their own transactions. So
Right.
Very strange.
From the Patriots.
Regardless, Jordan Matthews is no longer on the roster.
Right, and I think that many of us assumed that he would have some sort of a role with the Patriots and not expecting him to get cut a week after training camp begins. But I don't know. I mean, I think that Eric Decker is a decent fit for the offense, but at the same time, he's got some competition there.
Yep. Yeah, he's got potential. He's definitely a name, obviously, given the success that he had both in New York with the Jets and in Denver with the Broncos under Josh McDaniels, actually, which is a bit of a connection that was talked about after he worked out for the team earlier this week. But he's been a free agent now for, 4 months? Since March, and it really took an injury on the Patriots a week into training camp for them to even bring him in here. So obviously it's probably not wise to expect too much from Eric Decker. We have seen players in the past kind of be passed over by other teams and then come to New England and have success. But just seeing as this guy had been sitting on the open market for so long, he's 31. He didn't have a great season last year. He was okay with the Tennessee Titans. The year before, he only played 3 games because he had a shoulder injury. So he hasn't really been anything resembling a top-level wide receiver since 2015. So given all those factors, he's a bit of a wild card right now. But, I mean, with the skill set that he has, he's played a lot in the slot over his career. He's a big slot receiver, which the Patriots don't usually have, which coincidentally, or maybe not coincidentally, was kind of what we were projecting Jordan Matthews could be for the Patriots. So maybe Eric Decker can come in and fill that role that we were projecting for Jordan Matthews. Maybe he kind of takes on a different role. We've seen guys go from slot receiver to outside to slot when they come to New England, or maybe he gets cut. Who knows? I mean, it's kind of a no risk situation here for the Patriots because I'm sure he didn't get much money for the 1-year contract that he got. So it doesn't work out. Cut him, then you're back where you started.
Yeah, 2 things on Eric Decker. Apparently his name is kind of hard to say because we both kind of started trying to say...
Did I say Derek?
Derek Ecker or something. But maybe, I don't know, it's just the heat of camp that's getting to us. But the other thing is that I don't know how the Patriots plan to use him, but he actually does have some punt return experience, which I think makes him a little bit more interesting. He has 10 career punt returns for 168 yards, with 1 touchdown. He has not returned a punt since 2015, but some of the players that the Patriots have thrown out there as punt returners in training camp have even less experience in the NFL as punt returners. That would be Patrick Chung, Chris Hogan, and Rex Burkhead. So I don't know. I mean, maybe you don't usually want to throw out a guy like Eric Decker to return punts because maybe there's an injury risk there or something, but I don't know. I mean, if they aren't really counting on him to do that much anyway as a receiver this year potentially, then maybe at least see what he can do as a punt returner, because if he's not returning punts for the first 4 games of the season when Julian Edelman is suspended, then it's either probably going to be Cyrus Jones, Braxton Berrios, Riley McCarron, or someone who's very inexperienced in that role. And I guess one more thing on Decker is that he is 2 years removed from a 1,000-yard season when he had 12 touchdowns. Kenny Britt is 1 year removed from a 1,000-yard season. At the same time, they're around the same age, and Decker has had the better career out of the two players. So it is kind of interesting to maybe compare those players, even though their roles might be a little bit different in the Patriots offense.
Yeah, that span that Eric Decker had earlier in his career from what was it, 2012 to 2015. He had over 4,000 receiving yards. He had 41 receiving touchdowns. So he was tremendously productive during that span.
Yeah.
Obviously, haven't seen it in a couple of years. If he can get back to, we're not expecting him to be back at that level here, but if he can get anywhere remotely resembling that type of player, I think he can really be a weapon for the Patriots. Now we're just gonna have to wait and see how healthy he is, how much gas he has left in the tank, all of these things. So yeah, a lot of uncertainty with Eric Decker, but definitely a lot of potential here, I'd say.
Yeah, we'll definitely see how it goes. That'll be fun to watch in training camp, and he's just another storyline to watch when the Patriots start their preseason a week from today. You'll probably be listening to this on Friday, but we are recording this on Thursday just to let you guys all know what day of the week it is, I guess, or something. I don't know why I said that. With a week of training camp in the book, or I guess a little bit more than a week since we've watched, I don't know.
We've watched 7 practices.
Right.
So a week's worth of practices. Plus the off day thrown in there.
Let's just go position by position and kind of give our takes on what the Patriots are working with here. I think that's the best way to handle this a week into camp, because there are a lot of thoughts on a lot of these players. Starting out at quarterback, I think that after a first few days of camp, some people might have been, I guess worried would be too much of a stretch, but Brady's completion percentage numbers were a little bit down from past training camps, but he's really rebounded over the last few days when he's completed almost every pass that he's thrown. So anyone who was worrying about Brady, I think those concerns can be put to rest. And the other interesting player at this position is obviously Danny Etling, the rookie quarterback, 7th-round pick. He hasn't been getting a lot of reps, and he's been extremely inconsistent. So I think that that's kind of where we stand on Etling right now.
Yeah, starting with Tom Brady there, I think if anybody was worried about Tom Brady after 3 or 4 training camp practices, I don't think they've really watched much Tom Brady over the years. He wasn't quite as crisp, quite as sharp as maybe he usually is, or he has been in the past. But yeah, like you were saying, over the last couple of days, he's definitely looked much more like himself. I don't think there's any reason to worry about Tom Brady, even though he will turn 41. He'll probably be 41 by the time you listen to this podcast, because his birthday is on Friday. And then, yeah, Danny Etling, he was a player I think both of us liked in the spring. We were both pleasantly surprised with how he came in as a 7th-round pick and really kind of displayed some improved mechanics. He didn't blow anybody's socks off, but you said, oh man, maybe they have a player here. Maybe he's even somebody who could potentially challenge Brian Hoyer for that top backup spot. So far in training camp, not so much. He looks very much like a low-round rookie right now. He's got a good arm. He's made some really good throws, but he's struggled a lot with screen passes for some reason. He just can't really seem to complete these short passes. Doesn't seem to have a lot of touch on the ball. He's definitely putting in the work. I mean, he's been one of the first players on the field, one of the last players to leave every practice, but it's clear he does have a lot of work to put in. Yeah,
and I will say for him that he hasn't thrown a lot of interceptions so far in camp, and I mean, our buddy Henry McKenna was just talking about how who was it, the Chief, Patrick Mahomes for the Chiefs has thrown like 6 interceptions in 6 days of camp. So we're not kind of seeing that from Etling. He is getting a lot fewer opportunities, but yeah, he's not excelling so far. Let's move on to running back, where the Patriots have a decent amount of injuries right now. Mike Gillislee practiced in a red non-contact jersey today. Sony Michel missed practice. So it's kind of been the Jeremy Hill show on offense. I still think that, maybe the Patriots elect to keep 5 running backs, maybe they only elect to keep 4, but right now I would probably keep Jeremy Hill over Mike Gillislee just solely based on injury history, because it seems like Gillislee is just always hurt.
Yeah, I agree with that. And even before Mike Gillislee was hurt, I do think that Hill seemed to have maybe a slight edge on even just the number of reps that he was getting. Those first 4 or 5 between those two, Sony Michel, James White, and Rex Burkhead, were all kind of rotating through with the first unit there. But yeah, I mean, Gillislee, especially after the season he had last year, where he was really good at the start, then he was okay for a while, then he got hurt, and then we didn't see him for the rest of the year, basically. And now if he's hurt again already, he missed, I believe, 2 practices before he came back today in the red non-contact jersey, which means he obviously didn't really participate in any of the full team drills or anything. So, yeah, he's a guy that was really going to have to kind of improve his own stock this offseason, and I don't think he has so far. I haven't been blown away by Jeremy Hill by any reason so far, but if you have to pick between those two players right now, which a lot of people think the Patriots will end up choosing to keep one of those players or the other, I think you have to give the edge to Hill at the moment.
Yeah, and training camp's not a great time to really evaluate running backs anyway. I guess early in camp, Sony Michel had kind of a fumbling issue, but he's now hurt, so I guess that's kind of in the past. Speaking of injuries, wide receiver is another place where the Patriots have a decent amount of injuries. Kenny Britt is still on the physically unable to perform list, which it's really kind of delaying his camp and delaying the hype that was surrounding Kenny Britt over the spring and now entering the summer. But when he's back on the field, I am kind of expecting big things. But I think Philip Dorsett has probably been the biggest winner in this group just because of how much the Patriots are using him. They've been trying him out in the slot. They've been trying him out outside. When the Patriots kind of split off into their key offensive skill position players, he's been part of that group with Rob Gronkowski, Julian Edelman, Chris Hogan, and Jacob Hollister. So kind of all good things for Dorsett so far.
Yeah, I would say Dorsett is probably one of the players on the entire offense who's improved his stock the most so far in training camp, along with Jacob Hollister, who we'll get to in a minute. Mm-hmm. But yeah, Philip Dorsett, a player who played a ton last year, just didn't really do anything. I think he only had 10 or 12 catches the entire season, despite playing almost 400 offensive snaps. He basically seemed like he was almost a deep threat decoy for a lot of those games last year. But they have shown a willingness to use him kind of in different spaces, in different ways this offseason, between playing him outside, playing him inside, giving him the ball on some misdirection type plays. So it definitely seems like they do have higher hopes for him than what he showed last year. And Bill Belichick, whenever he's been asked about Philip Dorsett, he's been incredibly complimentary. Yeah. So read into that what you will, but I think he's definitely a guy who's gone from maybe the bottom part of the roster bubble coming into camp, who now seems like he's a pretty safe bet to make the team, depending on what happens over the next month or so.
Definitely, and I still don't know, how much he'll actually produce in 2018, but it certainly seems like he's got a good shot at a roster spot. The other kind of notable player in there is Cordero Patterson, that's what I thought. Yeah. For some reason, I can't nail that down. Cordero.
You have trouble with that one.
I do have trouble with that one. He's been up and down, I guess I would say. He makes spectacular plays. They made a one-handed catch, and he made a catch on a deep touchdown from Brian Hoyer. Granted, it was over Jordan Richards, but it was still he makes highlight plays, but on just a play-to-play basis, I think he's a little bit inconsistent there.
Yeah, he's a strange player to evaluate, because I feel like if you were not watching practice and you were just kind of seeing the Twitter reaction to practice, you'd say, oh my God, Cordell Patterson, is he going to have 1,000 receiving yards this year? What's going on? He's incredibly athletic. He's fast, he's huge, he makes these ridiculous catches. I think the catch he made today might have been the best of camp. It was a one-on-one drill against Jason McCourty, and literally it was almost like a Randy Moss type catch. Just reached out one hand, plucked the ball out of the air over McCourty's head.
And there was nothing McCourty could do about it. No. He was actually in good coverage. That's why he had to make a one-handed catch.
Yeah, and he makes plays like that on a regular basis. It feels like every day he's making some sort of highlight reel catch. But it still doesn't look like he has the best grasp of route running, which has kind of been one of the biggest issues for him throughout his career. And just on like you said, a play-to-play basis, he hasn't been a consistent performer. It doesn't seem like he's consistently getting open, consistently putting himself in the right position, which, I guess that's kind of what you expect when you get Cordell Patterson, who's been that home run threat throughout his career. He's good for 2, 3, 4 plays like that each game, and then but he's not going to be a guy who's going to go out there and catch 12 passes for you. So we'll see. I mean, we'll see how he's used once the actual games start. And obviously he still does have that great value as a kick returner in the new kickoff system this year. But yeah, very, very difficult to really evaluate what he's looked like so far this camp.
2 other notes from the receiver position. If you're trying to determine who's winning the battle between Braxton Berrios and Riley McCarron, I think McCarron kind of started to distance himself a little bit. Today in practice, he had some nice catches in one-on-ones. He was running with the first team in those 11-on-11 drills with Tom Brady. He did mess up at one point and drop a pass and kind of received a tongue lashing from Brady. But maybe that's a good sign, like that Brady's comfortable enough there. And the other one is just Malcolm Mitchell, who is still not practicing, and we really don't know what's going on there.
Yeah, I think we've expended enough words on Malcolm Mitchell over the last 6 months that anything that we could say now would basically just be a rehash of our previous 15 podcasts. So yeah, who knows what to expect from him until we actually see him back on the field, which we have not yet. And at this point, between Berrios and McCarron, I think that if the season started today, the Patriots wouldn't want to keep either of them, because I don't think either of them have flashed nearly enough to kind of establish themselves as any sort of significant offensive threat. But like we mentioned earlier, they are some of the only experienced punt returners the Patriots have. So we'll see how that whole thing shakes out. But yeah, right now I would be surprised if, neither of them really look like they can make a great offensive impact this season. It is still early though, so who knows?
Definitely. At tight end, I think Jacob Hollister is the big name. Gronk is Gronk. Dwayne Allen hasn't done much. Ryan Izzo is still wearing number 60, so I feel like we've just kind of discounted it.
They did him dirty with the number 60. Yeah. It's just like, you see him out there and he just looks like an undersized center. And like, what the hell is this guy doing? At least Shane Wyman, who got cut, got to wear number 69 and get Gronk laughing at him or whatever. But yeah, number 60, tough look.
Will Tye, I think, has had some moments, but Jacob Hollister has really been the big standout there. He had a good day of practice today where he caught some passes, and it seems like he might really be ready to take a pretty significant second-year jump. He's another one who really did almost nothing last year in the offense. The 3 players who did almost nothing but played a lot of games were Jacob Hollister, Dwayne Allen, and Philip Dorsett. There's no real reason to believe that Dwayne Allen is ready to take a significant jump forward this season. He hasn't really stood out to me, but Hollister does look like he's undersized but very athletic tight end who's definitely getting more and more comfortable in this offense each day.
Agreed. He's been awesome. He's been one of the biggest standouts both from the spring and so far in camp. He's really put himself in a good position, I think.
Yeah. So moving on to offensive line. I think a lot of people were wondering who was going to be the starting left tackle because we really didn't get a great sense of that in the spring so far. It has been Trent Brown. Isaiah Wynn has mostly been playing tackle, though. It's just kind of been subbing in the first team and running there with the second team a little bit.
Yeah, I'd say he's been playing almost exclusively second team left tackle. Yeah. He's gotten a few cameos on that first offensive line, but that top offensive line really hasn't been changed much at all, except for the fact that Adrian Waddle has had to come in a couple times at right tackle for Marcus Cannon, who has left 2 practices with injuries or with apparent injuries and then missed today's practice with what we assume is an injury. So who knows what his status is looking like. The Patriots do have a relatively reliable backup there in Waddle, who was with the team all last season. But yeah, it really looks like, I think I was expecting a little bit more of a competition between Brown and Wynn, and maybe we'll still get it. Obviously, we're only 1 week into training camp and we still have all the preseason games to play. But so far, it looks like the Patriots have kind of identified Trent Brown as the guy they want to be starting in there at left tackle.
Yeah, I think some of that too is that we were seeing in the spring, I saw it a little bit in camp so far, it just seems like Wynn is still playing like a rookie to some degree. And I think that's a bit of a surprise to me because I think that he was viewed as kind of a really pro-ready type prospect at left tackle. But I think he's just kind of getting his feet under himself in the system, and maybe it'll take him a little bit longer. Maybe with some preseason action, he'll vault up there to the first team, or we'll just have to see what happens. Outside of those guys, not a whole lot of standouts. I feel like Matt Tobin is a guy who's kind of been decent in one-on-one drills, but I'm not sure if I've seen enough to say he's ready to take a jump into the backup conversation or anything. But he's a guy who's had some decent reps in there.
Yeah, they picked up a couple of veterans who have bounced around a little bit this offseason. Just got a guy this week in Brian Schwenke, who was on Tennessee, I believe.
Yeah,
last.
He actually looked fine today too.
He's looked fine.
Yeah.
It's still kind of difficult to judge offensive line play because they did start doing one-on-ones this week, which is always exciting. But the Patriots insist on doing it about 200 yards away from all the receivers with a line, or from all the reporters rather, with a line of offensive linemen standing in the way. So we try to watch those as best we can. But I think maybe the offensive line will become a little bit more. The picture will become a little more clear once the preseason games start.
Let's move on to the defensive line. I guess we could split this up, and now let's just do defensive line in general. I guess I would start this off by giving maybe winners and losers at the position. My winners would be Danny Shelton and Dietrich Wise, and my losers, and this might be a little bit harsh, would be, I guess, Adrian Claiborne and Malcolm Brown. My winners would be Shelton and Wise, just because Shelton's been really dominant during one-on-ones, and he has been in that starting defense. Dietrich Wise has been vaulted into the first-team defense at defensive end over Adrian Claiborne. So that would be why I would put Claiborne in kind of the losers category. Claiborne also has not stood out to me much in one-on-one drills. And Malcolm Brown would also be in that losers category just because it seems like he's been overtaken by Shelton and Guy as far as being a first-team defensive tackle. Once again, we'll see if that sticks, but it's definitely notable that the starting defensive line in recent practices has been Danny Shelton and Lawrence Guy at defensive tackle, and Trey Flowers and Dietrich Wise at defensive end.
Yeah, I would definitely consider Brown among the losers in this group. Not that he's performed noticeably poorly, but it is notable the fact that he's been a starter the last couple seasons, and now he has been consistently playing with that second unit. Claiborne has been in there as well, but I didn't really view him as a lock starter by any means, because he's always been kind of a third down situational sub-package pass rusher.
At least for the last few years.
At least for the last few years, so I wasn't really sure how the Patriots were going to use him in that role. And interesting to see that Derek Rivers, who's obviously working his way back from that torn ACL, cost him all of his rookie season. We haven't seen him out there with the first team at all. He's been consistently working with that second team with Claiborne so far. Yeah,
linebacker Kyle Van Noy had a kind of interesting quote about Rivers and Wise yesterday, saying that, those guys, their time will come. It might not come as quickly as some people want it to, but their time will come. And it seems a little bit more like he's referencing Derek Rivers in that than Dietrich Wise, because Wise did play a decent amount last year, had 5 sacks, and seems like he's primed for a pretty big role this year.
Third in the team in sacks, second in QB hits, and he has been very, very good this summer. I think he's been one of their best defensive players so far.
Yeah, absolutely. Moving on there to linebacker. I'm not sure if there's been a ton of standouts outside of Kyle Van Noy. Kyle Van Noy has got his hand on quite a few footballs. He's been great in pass coverage. I think that Juwan Bentley's had some moments as well. I don't think anyone really expected him to be a decent pass coverage option because he is so big, because he was more of a run defender in college, but he has definitely stood out more than Christian Sam, and really more than some of those other linebackers on the team, including Marquise Flowers, Harvey Longy, Nicholas Grigsby. So I'd say good things for Juwan Bentley there.
Yeah, I think he's been solid so far. I agree with you that Kyle Van Noy has definitely been the standout of this group. I feel like he might come close to leading this entire team in pass breakups right now through the first 7 practices. He seems like he's getting his hand on passes pretty much every single day out there. I guess one takeaway from me in this group is that the top unit hasn't really changed at all. It's basically Kyle Van Noy, Landon Roberts, Dante Hightower. You haven't seen Bentley or Christian Sam work their way into that group really at all. You haven't seen Marquise Flowers working with the top unit at all. So Patriots seem to have that pretty crystallized in there for now. Obviously, like every position, could change once the preseason game starts. But yeah, the rookies and some of the guys who played a larger role last season while Dante Hightower was out haven't really been seeing that so far.
Yeah, and when the Patriots are in what kind of seems to be their base defense, which would be 5 defensive backs, it has been Hightower and Van Noy. Roberts has been not in that first team unit. He is when it's 3 linebackers. He's not when it's 2 linebackers. And Harvey Longy has been kind of practicing more with the defensive ends than the linebackers. I've got him here on the list on linebackers, but not a lot to see from Longy so far. I know that some people had high hopes for him.
Yeah, I would say, yeah, he hasn't been a guy that stood out to me so far. I think he did stand out more last year when we all kind of identified him as one of the UDFAs that was most likely to make the roster. Another player who hasn't been bad, he just hasn't really hasn't made any real kind of standout plays so far that we've seen.
Absolutely. Defensive back, let's start off with cornerback here. This one could take a while just because
there's a lot going on.
There's a lot going on here. So Cyrus Jones and Jonathan Jones are still on the physically unable to perform list. No real sense of when those guys will be back. We haven't seen any, upgrade from them at this point. They're still just working on conditioning on a lower field. We haven't seen them, put a uniform on or do anything more. So not a lot to expect from them at this point. I'd say that the locks in this roster group at cornerback right now, definitely Stephon Gilmore. He's perhaps been the best player in camp so far.
Agreed.
It would be between him and Tom Brady. He's been fantastic. Eric Rowe's been the other starting cornerback, so he'd be a lock. And Duke Dawson has been the top nickelback, and not the top nickelback. He's been the top slot cornerback. Patrick Jones, or I guess Deron Harmon's been the top nickelback, but I digress. Duke Dawson, he's a second-round pick. He's not getting cut. Beyond that, I'm not sure if I would put anyone else as a lock in this group. I think the next best chances to make this roster would probably be Jason McCourty and J.C. Jackson. J.C. Jackson had a really good day today, actually, where he had an interception and 2 pass breakups. But he's really competing, in my eyes at this point, probably with Ryan Lewis, who's also had a good 3-day stretch of camp. Keon Crossan is still dealing with an injury, so we'll see when he can get healthy. And Jamal Wiltz is kind of the least likely to make the roster.
Low man on the totem pole, I would say that too. Yeah, that's kind of the sense I'm getting. I still wouldn't be. I think Jason McCourty will make this team. He has actually played pretty well. He's kind of been one of the, I guess you could say, quiet standouts of the last couple of days of camp, because he hasn't been in there with the ones that much, and he hasn't been racking up pass breakups or anything like that. But he's just been providing kind of consistently solid coverage in pretty much every drill he's in, which is kind of what you expect from a veteran who has that sort of reputation throughout his career. I still don't think he's a lock. I think there is a chance that he could be the surprise cut from this group or from this team, but I would definitely put him probably right down on the rung below those top 3 guys. Ryan Lewis has been playing very well over the last couple of days. J.C. Jackson had an awesome spring. He was probably the biggest defensive MVP of spring practice. I think he did have a good day today. His interception and his pass breakups were against Hoyer and Danny Etling on some pretty rough passes out there. But it seems like every year the Patriots have a cornerback, an undrafted cornerback who makes the 53-man roster. Jackson's really the only option in that regard this year, so I think he definitely has a chance of sticking around. I think it might be in the Pats' best interest to try to get Keon Crossan on either the PUP, or I guess he can't be on the PUP now, but maybe on IR as a rookie, especially if he's not really going to have a significant role. He's been hurt. You can maybe just kind of stash him there, let him bulk up a little bit, prepare for next year. But yeah, there's still a lot of positions and a lot of roster spots up for grabs in this group.
Yeah, Keon Crossan, he's been dealing with a back injury for most of camp at this point. He had a good spring practice, but then he got hurt in spring.
One good spring practice.
Right. Yeah. So it's just it's tough to gauge how he's doing at this point. And I would even, if he stays healthy if he gets healthy and stays healthy, I would even probably, if everything goes on track at this point, probably try to slip him onto the practice squad or something, because he just hasn't done enough at this point to be earning a 53-man roster spot, and he'd be below J.C. Jackson and Ryan Lewis for me. The McCourty Rowe thing is interesting because I think Rowe's been good, actually.
Yeah.
But I also kind of know what the Patriots have in Eric Rowe, and it hasn't been phenomenal since he's come to the team. So I would almost rather try Jason McCourty because he has been really good in camp, in that first team, but I'm not sure what the Patriots are waiting for, but maybe they're waiting till the preseason to see what he can do with the first team. Maybe they're waiting a few more days of camp. But I would definitely like to see what he could do opposite Stephon Gilmore in that first team defense.
Yeah, I'm really interested to see how they do the rotation with the cornerbacks once those preseason games do start. I want to see how much, because typically starters don't tend to play, or projected starters don't tend to play a ton in the preseason. But for a guy like Eric Rowe, whose job is by no means safe, I'd be interested to see how they kind of divvy up those reps between Rowe, between McCourty, whether they have them switching off drives, whether they have one guy play first quarter, one guy play second quarter, something like that. Because I don't think we're going to really get a great sense until then of A, how the Patriots feel about both players, and B, who performs at the best. I mean, even in practice when you're going full speed, full pads, full contact, everything, you can't get a full total sense until you kind of strap it up against another team, which is why it's a bit of a shame that the Patriots don't have joint practice this year, and we can't really see that until the games actually start up.
Yeah, I mean, I would play Stephon Gilmore as little as possible in the preseason, probably. And just
I would give him almost the Gronk treatment. Just let him have maybe a series a game.
And then that gives all the other guys so many more opportunities to go out there. Safety, I think it's mostly status quo for the Patriots. The one interesting thing is that Nate Ebner is still on the PUP list, so we'll see when he can come off of that. But I mean, we know that Devin McCourty, Patrick Chung, and Deron Harmon are making this roster. When Nate Ebner comes off the PUP list, he'll be on the roster. Jordan Richards, we'll see if he can finally be pushed off by someone. He got torched deep by Cordero. Why do I think it's Cordarrelle? Or is it definitely?
No, because it's Darrell. It's spelled the same as Darrell Revis.
Yes.
But it's pronounced differently.
Okay.
It's Cordero, but the Darrell is, they got the 2 R's and the 2 L's. It's spelled the same way, pronounced differently.
All right. I've confused myself too many times on that one at this point. But yeah, Jordan Richards, we'll see if he can get pushed off the roster. Eddie Pleasant, I think at this point would probably have the best chance. He's kind of a special teams guy, box safety, who's got a lot of experience with the Houston Texans. Demarius Travis has less of a chance, but still maybe a chance to push Jordan Richards off the roster. Travis has had some moments.
Yeah, he's made a few plays,
Not anything great. And then A.J. Moore is the other safety on the roster, but he's really more of a special teams option, and I think his best chance of making the roster would be if Nate Ebner has to stay on PUP for the rest of the summer and starts the season on PUP. If that's the case, then maybe we see A.J. Moore at least make the roster to start the season.
Yeah, I think Moore's only real chance of making the roster is as basically what Jonathan Jones did a couple years back, where they put him on the roster over a player who maybe could provide more defensive value because he was such a good special teamer. He's one of the guys that's been splitting off and working with guys like Brandon King, Brandon Bolden, some of Nicholas Grigsby, some of these guys who play mostly special teams. So that kind of indicates that they're not really looking at him much for a defensive role. But yeah, the big battle, I guess you could say, at safety is between Eddie Pleasant and Jordan Richards. Yeah. Obviously, Patriots fans would probably like to see Jordan Richards not be on this team anymore, considering he hasn't really shown much improvement over the 3 years that he's been here.
Yeah.
Eddie Pleasant is, he was a fine, serviceable player. I believe, who would he play? 5 seasons in Houston.
Yeah. He's a legit vet.
He was a legit vet. He was a good tackler. Plays kind of a similar position to what Jordan Richards played last year in New England as sort of that box safety, even sort semi-hybrid linebacker sometimes. Can do a lot of things. Not a flashy player really, but he. In my mind, it looks like you can upgrade the Jordan Richards spot by putting somebody who basically does the same thing and has a better track record of doing it. So we'll see how that all shakes out.
Yeah, I would probably stick Eddie Pleasant in there over him, and yeah, he's had some reps on the first team. I think it was mostly when Patrick Chung was just kind of like sitting on the sideline for a little bit, but notable that he was in there over Jordan Richards at the time. And on the A.J. Moore thing, I will say that he has more defensive experience than some of the other prime special teams players that the Patriots have had in the past. Like Nate Ebner barely played defense at Ohio State and he made the roster. Brandon King barely played defense at Auburn and he made the roster. Going back to Malcolm Williams, who was drafted in 2011, Matthew Slater, some of these guys just barely have played on offense or defense in college. A.J. Moore actually did play a lot of defense at Ole Miss. He says in his bio that he started every game at the nickel position. So interesting that he probably played a little bit of slot cornerback at Ole Miss. Patriots are looking at him as a safety. So maybe down the line he would have some defensive upside. But I don't know, he is an interesting player just because the Patriots have been working with him so much on special teams. It almost makes you wonder that, since Nate Ebner did tear his ACL during the regular season, maybe they're not expecting him to make the roster to start the year, and maybe it would be a guy like A.J. Moore or maybe another cornerback who would make the roster for special teams, especially since Jonathan Jones also is on PUP right now. And we don't really know when he's coming off PUP and onto the roster since he suffered a foot injury really late.
Yeah, divisional playoffs.
In the playoffs. He did participate a little bit during the spring, which makes me think that maybe he's closer returning than someone else. But yeah, I think that A.J. Moore is just kind of a guy to keep in mind, kind of in the back of your mind, as a guy who could be a surprise guy to make the roster sometime down the line, or maybe even out of camp.
Yep. Fun fact about A.J. Moore: played in a defensive backfield with his twin brother at Ole Miss, and his twin brother stayed another year at Ole Miss. I think he redshirted or something. But the Patriots absolutely would have signed both of them if they had both come out, just to have 3 sets of twins on the same team, which I would have been all for.
Absolutely. And it just I don't know why this turned into A.J. Moore show, but he did run a 4.4 coming out of Ole Miss, that good 40 time, and he has that prototypical special teams measurables, which basically what that means is really fast but doesn't stand out in the agility drills. A.J. Moore had a pretty bad 20-yard shuttle, 4.38 seconds, pretty bad 3-cone, 7.27 seconds, but that's really right in line with what Brandon King ran, with what Matthew Slater ran, with what Jonathan Jones ran. None of those guys stood out in the agility drills, but they do stand out in the speed and the leaping. So certainly a prototype special teams type player for the Patriots. And we just spent like 20 minutes talking about A.J. Moore, so I don't know what we're doing here.
We're losing our minds down here.
I think it's time to get out of here. So keep it on NESN.com for all of your Patriots coverage. Follow me on Twitter at Doug Kyed. That's DougKyed. Follow Zack on Twitter at Zack NESN. That's Zack spelled Zack. And we will be back probably next week sometime, maybe after the preseason game, unless anything crazy happens. If not,
either right after or right before.
There we go.
Late next week.
Yes, right around this time next week. Like I said, keep it on NESN.com for all of your Patriots coverage.